to give you a little bit of context about radiating box before we begin. Okay? The first time that I was working at the Globe, at Shakespeare's Globe in London, and if you're not familiar with it, I'll give you a quick primer. There's the audience and the actor are in shared daylight, right? And the audience is basically on three sides. It's almost virtually in the round, but not quite, because it's a polygonal sided theater. It's a 20-sided space, and so the audience is not quite all the way around, but just about from, say, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, right, like this. And what I noticed in that space was that up until that point, I really had found myself disconnecting in my back, right? And I think that you'll find that a lot of our classes are set up really to be based in a proscenium arch tradition, right, where the audience is on one side or end on stage. I'm sure many of your classes, when students get up to do scene work, there will be two actors doing a scene here, and all of the respondents are on the opposite end, right? I mean, this is kind of our default setup for scene work in acting class, for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. And so what starts to happen with actors is that as we're training, we begin to train in a very frontally oriented way, right? Where, and if you think about our vernacular, right, when we say to actors, turn out, or, don't upstage yourself, right? This is common, right? Don't upstage yourself. But that, the only way you can really upstage yourself is if the audience is only in one spot. Right? So just to have a sense of, the contextualization of radiating box. So the purpose of the exercise is to create and promote a sense of three-dimensional awareness of the actor, a sense of heightened kinesthetic response and awareness. And I also use it on a regular basis as a warm-up for classroom and for rehearsal. Because once you begin to heighten the kinesthetic sense and responsiveness, then you begin to release and radiate, just to go back to Michael Chekhov's work, right? To release and radiate more three-dimensionally, right? So you get a much more kind of holistic presence. It heightens the sense of presence for the actor on stage. And so I would love to have a minimum of 10 participants so I can take you through the exercise. You'll understand why in just a moment. But it's very, very, you won't have to be very physical, trust me. Great, thank you. I think 10 would be ideal, but I understand if you only do 30, that's okay. So the first thing that I'll ask you to do is just to begin to move throughout the space, okay? As you're moving through the space, begin to notice how your feet come in contact with the floor. Notice what's happening in the back. If you're holding any tension, just observe it, let it go, okay? Notice what's happening in your bum, in your belly. Are you pulling up? What's happening in the back of the neck? What's happening with the jaw, okay? Think of this component right now as a little bit of a walking meditation, and I'm going to give you the instructions before I ask you to begin, okay? So this is how we will begin to execute radiating box. As you are moving through the space, when you have an impulse to begin the formation of the box, I'd like you to simply stop where you are and close your eyes. When you stop, stand still and close your eyes. I'd like you to begin to radiate forth and invite 4 people to join you, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, in forming the sides of a box. Those 4 people will on their impulse, choose to become a side of the box, and they will make, before I keep going, wait, hang on, because I'll give you the instructions before you begin. So it's a little bit, just as I'm giving you the instructions, continue to just notice, oh, can I breathe a little bit more deeply? Can I release, am I clenching my thighs? What's happening in my knees? Just kind of talk yourself through those components. And obviously, when you repeat this exercise over time, you no longer have to give the instructions. The first time it always takes the longest. So when the 4 people have the impulse to become sides of the box, they will simply stop in that 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock position. And they will radiate forth towards the center of the box, right? So the first person has the initial response. They stop where they are, they close their eyes, and they radiate their energy forth, saying, come and join me, right? 4 people decide to join, they stop where they are, close their eyes, and they send their energy towards the center person to let them know that the side of the box has been complete. When the person at the center of the box senses kinesthetically that their box formation is complete, they simply open their eyes and they can confirm with all 4 sides of the box, and then they resume the walking meditation, and they can choose to become part of another person's box. Okay? So in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to begin. And what I'd like you to know is that it's about investigation. Okay? So don't worry, there's not a perfect way to form the box. It's about sending the energy forth, right? And it's about allowing yourself, if you are the center person, to become responsive to the energy of other people in the group. Okay? If all of a sudden we have multiple boxes cropping up, sometimes that happens, right? It's okay. It's okay. So now that you know how to create the box, when you have the impulse to do so, you can begin by simply stopping where you are and closing your eyes and inviting kinesthetically 4 people to join you. Sides of the box, remember that your intention to radiate forth the energy to complete the box is as clear and objective as the initiator of the box, okay? Let's make sure that as you're forming the sides of the box, that you're also clear about what your position is in the 4 sides. Has everyone had an opportunity to be a center? Or is there still someone who has to be a center? I would also remind you that if you are the center person, we're on a carpeted floor, so that tempers a little bit of the sound. But really to allow yourself to respond and to listen kinesthetically and not rely on the shuffling of jeans or the, I always do this barefoot or in socks, but the creaking of the floor depending on your studio, right? To really see what your partners are giving you kinesthetically and to trust your ability to communicate with the whole body. Why don't we, has everyone had a chance to be centered? Why don't we pause for a moment, because I want to tell you the sequence, and then we can continue to move on. Okay? So, as an ensemble becomes more and more attuned to one another kinesthetically, what I will then do is begin to introduce distance, right? So that then you can, okay, so if I'm radiating towards Lionel now, right? That's one relationship, spatial relationship. But if I'm radiating to him from here, right? Then, right? Oh, I know.
You just hit.
Right. So, then how does that change? And how does that fine-tune me in the instrument, right? As an instrument, how am I tuning, right? So it's not just like, oh, I get it here, right? But then we begin to introduce distance, right? After distance, we begin to introduce, the third one is levels, right? So what happens, because we probably won't have time to take you through all of it, but what happens if part of your box is not where you expect it to be, right? How can can you still give forth to your partner? Can you still receive from your partner, not where you expect them to be, but where they actually are and what they're actually giving you, right? So it does a lot of things. One thing that it does is clearly it makes you more aware of yourself three-dimensionally and in terms of your kinesthetic awareness. But what it also does simultaneously is that it demands that you remain in the moment. It's not where you expect the box to form, but it's actually what you're getting from the other people in the space, right? So I think we have enough time to go through again. Let's see what happens when we add space, okay? And you know what, if you're working over the course, say, of a semester, it's not unusual if the ensemble knows one another to even very clearly say, oh, I know that was that person, and I knew that Kevin was my 12 o'clock, right? Because we become so fine-tuned to one another kinesthetically. And then, when you begin to put that on stage or in rehearsal or in the classroom, wherever you're working, right, you have a kind of collective pulse of energy present in the ensemble. I'll stop talking soon. Another thing that certainly does come up is that sometimes people will pass through that field of radiating energy, and that's okay, because as you become more and more kinesthetically aware and that sense is heightened, you can say, oh, I knew that my 3 o'clock was there, but I also knew that someone walked right through it, right?
You want us to exercise level?
Yes, please, if we have time. Do we have time?
Yes,
Great.
you have 3 minutes.
And as time goes on, you can work with level and distance, right? So suddenly you have lots of different variables. You create layered physical vocabulary as a group. the challenge, right, the other challenge is two things. One, for the center person to receive the energy, right, to heighten the receptiveness of that kinesthetic awareness. But the other thing is for the people on the side, right, if I put my arms up, am I radiating through my fingertips as strongly or as clearly as I am through my thighs or my torso, right? So that you really become, if you think of yourself as a thermographic image moving through space, are you illuminated all the way through your body, reaching forward, as opposed to, well, I'm radiating from, say, my solar plexus, right? Or I've conquered that, but the rest of me is kind of half engaged or less engaged, right? But really being able to, over time, build the sequence forward to maximize the impact of it. I'm not sure how much time we have. 1 minute. Great. Thank you so much for participating. I want to just thank you. There was one or two other things I just want to leave you with, which is, one, when you begin the initiation of the box, right, that it's very, particularly early in the progression, right, the first time you do it, the first 2 or 3 times you do it, you can be very vulnerable, right, because you're basically saying, I'm going to stand and close my eyes, and I trust that not only will you join and complete me, right? But I also trust my own ability to be receptive to that completion, right? So it's actually working on multiple levels at once, right? And then it builds partner trust, it builds ensemble, and it builds receptivity in the actor. So that's radiating box. Thank you.
Sure. This is great. Thank you, Val. This is I read this exercise in your book, and it's so nice to see it done because I had a lot of questions. And I was like, wow, I'd like to know what are some of the challenges of this. And I think the disadvantage is that you had some amazing participants who were who were open, very responsive to each other, which is good. So I'm like, oh, I can see where this can evolve, and I'm kind of curious to know where some of the stumble blocks might be for those who are just starting to do it.
Yeah.
Because for me, I love the idea of radiating, but it's been my most difficult part, especially with Michael Chekhov, because I'm kind of I believe that it happens. I think on a molecular level, it's scientifically being proven. But I'm also it's very difficult to assess if you're radiating or not. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's how are we doing it? But I think what I love about this is that it's that you can do it every class.
Yeah.
It can become a conditioning and a reconditioning, so that it gets them out of their head of this fourth wall thing, so that they become aware not just of an audience, but of each other in the space, which I think is really fantastic. And it's also just a great sort of warm-up for them to connect. So yeah, it's working on so many wonderful levels. And I think that idea of it not being perfect, which you were talking about, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be because the idea is really building awareness. It's not
right.
It's not about perfection. I'm curious about, especially with students, how do you deal with those students who want to know, they're I've got to do it right. You know what I mean? You're am I radiating or am I not radiating?
Yeah.
You're just relax. Don't overthink it. Just play.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you deal with those students. I mean, I have sort of a lot of questions, and I'm kind of curious about how it felt for some of the participants when they opened their eyes and would see the people around them, what that experience is, and how that started to change them.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to know if you had another version of this with text. I don't remember if you did. If they do a soliloquy or something while they're doing this, or
No.
did you add text to it at all?
No.
Because I feel like you very easily could start to add text to it, and then they start to radiate. And play
And this is
and what I love about the playing with the distance and levels is because you're very slyly introducing character, relationship, and status by doing that. Do you know what I mean? Without actually saying that that's what you're doing. I think that's a really sly, nice way for them to start understanding what the complexities of Shakespeare is without being overwhelmed by the language itself. So yeah, thank you. It was really nice. So,
I don't know if I can respond, but sometimes, we might not ever, there might be certain groups that don't get to the multiple levels, right? We might stay, you have to be responsive to the group, right? So a group might stay at that first sequence for several periods, and that's fine, and it's valuable in itself, and it's a great touchstone, to come in and we're doing this, and then we connect. Now I'm aware, I'm present, and ready to work.
This is something you can just do every class
Yeah.
semester long, and you find them getting better and better. Yeah,
They do get better at it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
What a treat to get to actually see you work. I loved the contextualization from the very beginning, talking about working at the Globe and what that was like. And you really put us there in a really kinesthetic way. And I felt that I was in good hands from the very moment that you started working. I was relaxed and engaged. You gave me a lot of wonderful new language that I'm going to steal. Training is front-oriented, and that's not something that I've ever used and put in that way. Create and promote the three-dimensional actor. I love that. The thermographic image, that idea, I think, is really compelling and telling to our younger actors. That's a very telling thing. I felt like your technique, your knowledge of subject is very strong and very deep and comes from a wellspring of depth and working with this subject. You have, as a presenter, an authentic physical connection to your own body and your own voice, and you are modeling for us best practices in just how you live the work. The results that I saw were that the actors' bodies were becoming more alive with this kind of kinetic energy as they worked. They got more connected to each other, and they got more adventuresome and daring in how they were using the work. And what I'm doing mostly now is working with corporate people. And presence is something they ask for. And they don't know what that means. And this is a great kind of thing to add to my tool chest of how to teach non-actors that sense of energy coming out of the body when I walk into a room. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie, for stepping in.
Oh, you're welcome.